like TorahAnytime.com.
Tzarayim Tov, we continue discussing this series of Zionism and its relationship to Judaism. We're working with the book, The Empty Wagon. And yesterday, just at the end of the class, we began to get involved with Rav Soloveichik, Zichrono Livracha, and who were more of the pragmatic type of Zionism. And let's get into Rav Soloveichik today, tomorrow, maybe a couple more days. We'll see how much. Again, Rav Soloveichik was a great Adam Gadol, no question about it. He was a skion of the Soloveichik family, so he definitely was part of that. But he did have some personal inner conflict, as we'll see later on more, not right now. But although his family was staunch Agudic people, he went away from it. And that's a discussion for another time. But let's see what he said. But first, to understand, Rav Soloveichik totally rejected Rav Kook's land-based Judaism. And like Rav Amiel that we discussed yesterday, he protested and he said that the Torah is as significant and accessible outside of Eretz Yisrael as it is in Eretz Yisrael. Now Rav Kook says, Rav Soloveichik is a very interesting thing. He says, yes, God did make a covenant with the patriarchs. And part of the covenant was to give us Eretz Yisrael. And at that time, Eretz Yisrael was central to Yiddishkeit, because that's all we had. But Rav Soloveichik says, but once the Torah was given at Sinai, then everything changed. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at that event, said the words, Kili kol haaretz, for the entire world is mine. And what does that mean, the entire world is mine? So take a look at the first source we have. Rav Soloveichik says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, this covenant is not limited to land. The covenant is obligatory and binding on every Jew, no matter where he finds himself, no matter whether in Boston or New York or Eretz Yisrael, whether on the Har HaBayis or on the moon. Because Kili kol haaretz, I have everything. Kiyum HaMitzvahs, the observance of mitzvahs, is applicable to any Jew, no matter where he finds himself. Hence, to say that Judaism revolves around Eretz Yisrael is wrong. Okay, we're not saying it's not an important thing, but doesn't revolve around it. It revolves around Hashem and the Torah. And Hashem has everywhere. Hashem is found everywhere. Once you have the Torah, Hashem is found everywhere. He goes on to say in that book, he says that the entire idea of saying that Jews have to live in Eretz Yisrael to have a fully Jewish life, he says that's wrong too. He says his grandfather Reb Chaim used to say, it's a mitzvah among many other mitzvahs, not central to Judaism. And he also says the Rambam in his Mishnah Torah in the Laws of Kings speaks about living in Eretz Yisrael, but he does not count it as a mitzvah. The Rambam himself lived in Cairo. He was in Eretz Yisrael for only a very short time. And Rav Soloveichik basically says wherever a person feels he can accomplish more in terms of Yiddishkeit, be it in Eretz Yisrael or in Chutz La'aretz, that's where he should live. Now he says nobody denies the loftiness of Eretz Yisrael, but he says there's no inferiority as far as a Jewish person's holiness if someone lives in Chutz La'aretz. And he specifically criticizes the younger Rav Kook. Look in source 2. If you follow the philosophy of Tzvi Hirsch Kook, a Jew outside of Eretz Yisrael is a non-Jew. And this is exactly against the pasuk of Kili kol haaretz. A Jew outside of Israel can be a perfect Jew. Where you can accomplish more is up to the individual. if you have a better yeshiva outside of Eretz Yisrael, then you should live outside of Eretz Yisrael. If moving to Eretz Yisrael with young children is going to be very dangerous for their yadus, because we know many people, when you move to Israel and the children are, like in their adolescence, when they need friends, is such a big thing, and you're shifting out of their friendships, a lot of kids went off the derech from that. So you got to realize the most important thing is, where can you be the best Jew you can be? If it's in Eretz Yisrael, to go to Eretz Yisrael. But if it's not in Eretz Yisrael, so it's not in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, that's a very important point he's saying. Yeah?
So one of the requirements for Mashiach to come is that all Jews need to...
That's when Mashiach comes.
Yeah,
But that's when Mashiach...
will not go, then how Mashiach will come? That is
There's an idea of kibbutz golios. We'll all be gathered together. But you can wait until the Mashiach comes. Let's wait till...
For Mashiach to come, we have to be there, right?
Yes, but the Mashiach can bring us. We don't have to be there before the Mashiach comes. What will happen during the times of Mashiach, everyone will be gathered together. But it could be after the Mashiach proclaims himself. You mean he's not coming till every single Jew is in Eretz Yisrael? That's not true. Now, when Mashiach comes, we'll all have to go. That's a fact. But he's not going to come for us to get killed in Israel. Okay, so that's an important point to remember. Now, what is Rav Soloveichik referring to against Rav Kook over here? So, very important, source number 3, it's a pasuk in Devarim. It's part of the Kriya Shema. Second paragraph of the Kriya Shema. V'samtem es divrei ela al levavechem v'yal nafshechem. Place these words upon your heart and soul. Ukishartem osam laos al yedchem, and tie them as a sign on your hands. Vayula totafos b'neinechem, and totafos in your eyes. So you have the mitzvah of tefillin. Says the Ramban. It's a long Ramban, but the only thing you need is the first line. He says, now remember, he says, Afla acher, source the bullet point. Afla acher shetiglu, even if you're an exiled. Heyu mitzuyanim b'mitzvahs, you should be distinctive in your mitzvahs. Hanichu tefillin, asu mezuzah, put on tefillin, have mezuzah. That's what the Shema says. Now here's the words of the Ramban that are very difficult to understand. Kidei shelo yaho aleichem chadoshim kishetachseru, so that they shall not be something new to you when you return to Eretz Yisrael. Now, what would that appear to mean? Okay, what is the way Rav Kook is learning it? It seems, it would appear to me, the mitzvahs in Chutz La'aretz are only a rehearsal of sorts for the mitzvahs to be done when the Jews return to Eretz Yisrael. That's what Rav Kook Jr. was saying. He said, well, it says it shouldn't be new to you. In other words, why does it have to say it shouldn't be new to you? You just have to do it because you always have to do mitzvahs. So Rav Kook said it means you're really not getting any credit for it. You know what? For example, when a little child does mitzvahs, he doesn't get schar for that because he's not bar mitzvah. But we want him to be ready when he is old enough that he'll be used to doing it. So the same thing, he wanted to extract out of the Ramban that, put on tefillin now that you're in Toronto. Not that you're really doing any mitzvah, but when you get to Israel, you will remember to do this. So that's what Rav Kook Jr. deduced from that. And Rav Soloveichik, again, that's impossible that the Ramban should mean that the mitzvahs we do in Chutz La'aretz are secondary to mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael. But that's what Rav Kook Jr. says. And that's source number 4.
It says the opposite.
What do you mean?
It says clearly, so if you're outside of Israel, then you should know how to do them as well. So we say you
know how to do them, but that doesn't mean you're fulfilled. But doesn't no. Why would you? Why would the Ramban have to say that? Just don't say anything. You do them outside of Israel. Period. Why do you say so? It should be new to you. It shouldn't be new to you. And if it's not, and if that's not the reason, then you don't put on tefillin. Put tefillin on because of mitzvah to do every day, not because it should be new to you if you haven't done it. So Rav Kook criticized, Rav Soloveichik criticized, says Kook comes out with the Ramban as if he's the only one to whom the Ramban has entrusted the text. I sweated out this Ramban, and the Ramban never said it. Really, this is a sifri. It's like a medrash. A difficult sifri. And we don't know exactly the text of the sifri. And no matter who says it, I don't care. The 3 words, Kili Kol Haaretz, settles everything. It means the obligation of mitzvahs outside of Eretz Yisrael is not to be considered a prologue or an introduction to fulfilling mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael. They are the same importance. Finished. So Rav Kook, but Rav Soloveichik doesn't really explain what those words mean as a preparation. But he was clearly against that understanding of the Ramban. And this is a Ramban that many of the religious Zionists are going to say. They're going to quote this Ramban, and Ramban says, well, it's only a preparation, it's not the real thing. So Soloveichik was very much against that, even though he was Mizrahi, but very much against the certain points, are...
They misunderstood the Rambam or what?
Well, you have to understand what it means. Why the Ramban have to add it? So let's see how Rabbi Chanan Wasserman learned Pshat in the Ran. Listen, all the Gedolim had to respond to this. So Rabbi Chanan Wasserman heard about this Ramban. So let's read inside. He says it's a big principle that Lutzado brings in Derech Hashem about all mitzvahs. All mitzvahs. All mitzvahs, and many other people say this idea as well, have 2 dimensions. When I ask you, why do you do mitzvahs? What are you accomplishing by doing mitzvahs? So one is, there's a reason that God commanded us to do the mitzvah, which would exist even if Hashem never commanded us. In other words, we could think of some good reason to do it, even if Hashem didn't tell us to do it. For example, let's say Shabbos. I can think of a reason to keep Shabbos. You need a day to break from the monotony. That's a good reason. That's a good reason to keep it. But obviously Hashem has much bigger reasons, for sure. Okay, that's a reason. But there's a second point, and when we received the Torah at Sinai, the second part, the fact it was given to us by Hashem and our Sinai as an obligatory responsibility. Okay, God says you got to do it, period. The first one is, the other rabbis use a different language. Do we consider the mitzvah of the Torah like good advice from a doctor? Right? It's for your benefit. And if you choose not to do it, you choose not to have that benefit. Or you say it's a king who's decreeing on his people. It's not your benefit. You do it because I said so. And if you don't do it, you're a rebel against the king. So there's 2 aspects. So when the Sifri says the mitzvahs and goals are secondary, it's only referring to the first of the 2 reasons to fulfill them, which apply only in Eretz Yisrael. Saying, there is a very good piece of advice, to do it in Eretz Yisrael. It's a good piece of advice. That's why the Avos were exempt from mitzvahs outside of Eretz Yisrael, because the patriarchs only did mitzvahs for the reason, but not for the law. But the obligation of the body, the obligatory nature of mitzvahs, because their commandments are received at Har Sinai, applies fully in Chutz La'aretz as well. God said, do it, period, finished. Okay, there could be an added virtue. Yeah, could be an added virtue. But then, but it's not, you haven't done mitzvahs. You're listening to Hashem. Could it be better if you didn't answer? Okay, now we'll have to value, where can you be a better Jew? If living there in Yisrael will cause me to have to, now I have a normal job, I can set aside time for Torah. If I move to Yisrael, I can't have that job. I'll have to do 6 jobs. I'm going to be busy working all day long. I won't have a second to learn Torah. So you think that's better to live in Eretz Yisrael? No. So you go with the main reason. That's what Rabbi Chanan says. Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz takes it on a different slant. And he says clearly, for starters, that you have to do mitzvahs are obligatory outside of Eretz Yisrael, just like in Eretz Yisrael. He says the difference between doing the mitzvahs in or outside of Israel is like Adam, first man, doing mitzvahs while he was in Gan Eden versus when he was expelled from it. The mitzvahs have their roots in Eretz Yisrael. The roots of all mitzvahs, it's coming from Hashem, and the center of the universe is Eretz Yisrael. And if someone is connected to the roots of the mitzvahs, he's considered connected to them. Okay, good. However, the difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz has nothing to do with location, but rather with one state of being, state of mind. So just as the advantage of Adam's being in Gan Eden was not the location, but his state of being while there. In other words, when you're in Gan Eden, do you realize you're in Gan Eden? Or are you not even thinking you're in Gan Eden? Knowing you're in Gan Eden and now doing the mitzvahs, that becomes very powerful. So too, the Ramban is not referring to being physically located in Israel, but to being in a state of connectedness with it. You feel connected to Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, someone like David HaMelech, who was in a state of being connected to Eretz Yisrael, he was really connected. So when he had to leave, he said, oh, no, now I had to run away. You've excluded me from cleaving to Hashem's heritage. He felt he didn't have that connection over there. But at the same time, but he still did the mitzvahs, even without feeling that connection. But at the same time, a person can be located in Eretz Yisrael while his condition, his mindset is one of Chutz La'aretz. And it's true that even while in Yisrael, these mitzvahs are no more than merely a rehearsal. You're not going to say that, like in Chutz La'aretz. Regarding people like this, Eretz Yisrael and Yishuv Eretz Yisrael are no better than Tefillin and Chutz La'aretz, for the idea of Eretz Yisrael is only an Eretz Yisrael type state of being. And someone who packs his belongings to go to Eretz Yisrael without preparation certainly does not understand the secret of Eretz Yisrael. What is he saying here? He's saying it's a state of mind. It's a state of mind. And yeah, if your state of mind is you have no connection to Eretz Yisrael, you're losing that feeling of connection that would be with every mitzvah. But doesn't mean to say you still don't do the mitzvah. Now, the point is saying you can be in Eretz Yisrael and not be in Eretz Yisrael. If you live in Eretz Yisrael and live a lifestyle exactly like being in Canada, you don't feel any Kedusha, you think you're in Eretz Yisrael. Well, I'm in Eretz Yisrael. No, you're not. Because you're not connecting to that reality, that matzav of Eretz Yisrael. And Eretz Yisrael itself has a tremendous Kedusha that it can bring upon every mitzvah, which is a virtue. We're not saying it's not a virtue, but it doesn't mean to say you're not a Jew if you don't do it. And therefore you have to say, okay, there's a tremendous virtue of that state of mind. And if you don't have that state of mind, then the mitzvahs you're doing is like a preparation for when you'll be in that state of mind. But you still have the obligation to do the mitzvahs. Since when can you say a person doesn't have to do mitzvahs? Okay, to say you don't have any connection to Hashem, it's preposterous. You could have a better connection, sure. Listen, we don't have a Beis HaMikdash either. What are we going to do about that? So Torah said, the rabbi said, so read the parshas of the Karbanos. It's like you brought the Karbanos. It's to bring that state of mind. So therefore, that is the way to learn the Ramban, not the way Rav Kook says you have to learn. Rav Kook Jr. says you have to learn the Ramban. Okay. So in this way, Rav Soloveitchik's valuing of the state of Israel was similar to that to Rabbi Reines that we mentioned much earlier. It was due to the pragmatic considerations more than ideological ones. Remember, that's how the original Mizrahi would join up. But Rav Soloveitchik does reject that most common practical claim that it's a safe haven in case there's another Holocaust. Remember, there's a lot of reasons to say there are pragmatic considerations to live in Eretz Yisrael. Yeah, I guess you don't have to work on Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael. That's a pragmatic consideration. There's a lot of benefits. You're with a lot of Jews. But one of the benefits is, well, it will avoid a Holocaust. So that Rav Soloveitchik did not agree with. and look at source 7. Imagine America goes, this was years ago. Soloveichik died many, many years ago. Imagine America goes anti-Semitic, Rahman al-Islam, like Germany in 1932. Imagine America discontinues its aid to Eretz Yisrael and supplies the Arabs with all the sophisticated weapons. Imagine, in addition to America, France and England go anti-Semitic. Now you have to take into consideration the 100 million Arabs. How secure would be Eretz Yisrael? Okay. All right. Now this was. I don't know exactly when he wrote this. His student put this book out in 2009, but I don't know exactly when he said that. But even by 2009, America was not anti-Semitic. Most of the world is not anti-Semitic. So, like, is that reason to be in Israel as a safe haven? If we're looking at that right now, I don't know how safe Eretz Yisrael is. Maybe certain parts of Eretz Yisrael are safe, but I would say, like, right now, Miderech HaTeva, Thornhill is a lot safer than Eretz Yisrael. Okay? It's a lot safer than certainly the areas up north, the areas down south. It's a lot safer. So you're not going to Eretz Yisrael for the security. That's what Soloveichik said. Now, what he did say is that the state of Eretz Yisrael gave the Jews, after the Holocaust, a sense of renewed pride. And that's also Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zichron Livracha, said the same thing, as if to say, the Jews had to have a state or there'd be no Jews would just give up, right? Because, if you have pride, that could prevent intermarriage. It could help defend ourselves from Christian missionaries and assimilationists who are going to say, look what God did to you. He destroyed you guys, and, you have no God. And people would be afraid to even say that they're Jews because there was tremendous hatred for the Jews in Europe. So, can you imagine a missionary comes to you and says, this is exactly what the gospel said, right? All the predictions of the ones who are against the Jews, they all came true. 1/3 was destroyed. The rest will get assimilated, lose their identity, completely erased. So therefore, Rav Soloveichik described that American youth at that time were very confused. So then there came the state of Israel and was the shield to stop this kind of gossip about Judaism. So he says that was a value to the fact that we had a state. It brought Jewish pride to secular Jews. Remember, the Reform movement in America was very strong, very powerful, and in the early 1800s, they did not believe in the state because people would think that's dual loyalties, and you have to be a loyal American. And guess what happened? We were very loyal Americans, and they all assimilated out. And being a Jew was nothing. Now, a Holocaust survivor going to America, forget about Yiddishkeit. Okay, so now, all of a sudden, the Jews win a war, there's a state. Whoa, there's something to be proud about to be a Jew. Something proud about to be a Jew. I mean, there's others who tried other things. The Klausenberger Rebbe and other people said, you're going to make a Jew proud by teaching them Torah. But Rav Soloveichik says that, and he went even a step further. He says, and you know what? For this pride, even if people die for it, it's worth it. Let's take a look in source 8, and this becomes a very interesting thing. So there are people quoting. He says, our Rebbe mentioned, the Satmar Rav asks in his Sefer, who permitted the Zionist leaders to sacrifice so many Jewish lives for the sake of establishing and maintaining their state? Right? Who gave them the right to say that? Saving lives outweighs the idea of a state, even if it would be a very great idea. What gives you the right? You're going to have people die just to have a state? So now they mentioned, our Rebbe said, it's apparently a very strong argument. Now, the author of the Empty Wagon said, I wonder why they had to quote the Satmar Rav. His own grandfather, the Brisker Rav, would say the same thing. So he said that's a very strong question. Why is it worth it for people to die for a state? So Rav Soloveitchik gives an answer, but it's based on 5 parts. Let's go through the 5 parts. Part 1, as his grandfather would say, he said, Reb Chaim Brisker held that saving a religious person from giving up his religion, if you know a Jew is going to leave the religion and you could stop it, has the status of pikuach nefesh, of saving his life. We may treat it as a life-threatening danger, and that's in opposition to the opinion of the Beis Yosef that the reason it's permitted to violate Shabbos to save one daughter from apostasy is because of the rule of you do a sin in order to merit to your neighbor. One should sin in order to save another from sinning. He doesn't say. He's saying that the Rav Chaim Brisker says, if somebody's dying, are you supposed to try to save that life? Yes, physically dying. So shouldn't you make an effort to stop them from spiritually? All the more so, right? We agree we have an obligation to stop people from spiritually dying. That we could all agree. Okay? And therefore, for example, it could even be Michal Shabbos. If I have to Michal Shabbos, and I'd be able to save a Jew, let's say the Christian missionaries are taking a kid away, and if you don't get to the kid before Shabbos, he's going to be gone. You could be Michal Shabbos for that, because you're saving his soul. It would appear on the surface that saving a non-Jewish religious Jew from intermarriage carries the same leniency as saving a religious person from giving up his religion in respect to the above. For intermarried people are literally people who disregard the entire Torah. The case of the Shulchan Aruch is, a Jew's going to go off, they're going to become a Christian. So you do what you can to stop. So he's saying intermarriage is pretty much the same thing. Reb Chaim also held that a person must put himself in a situation that may be dangerous to save someone else from a situation that is definitely dangerous. If it's definitely dangerous, you can put yourself in a possible danger. Okay, now, if the state of Israel were to disappear, the intermarriage rate in America and Europe would skyrocket. For only because of the state is there a bit of honor and pride and esteem for the Jews nowadays after the Holocaust. He says, if be no state, there'd be intermarriage. Therefore, says Rebbe Soloveitchik, the sacrifice of the individuals who are killed in Eretz Yisrael are in the category of individuals who put themselves in a possible danger to save the masses from a definite danger. So let's look at this logic here. What is Rav Soloveitchik saying? If there would not be a state of Israel, Jews would be in a definite danger of marrying out, and therefore one is allowed to put oneself in a doubtful danger in order to save people from this for sure danger. That's the logic of Rav Soloveitchik, and his student Rav Hershel Schachter follows that idea as well. Okay, sounds like a pretty powerful argument over here. So let's just look at one more point before I'm trying to make sure I have everything here. 7, 8. Okay, and there's one more statement from Rav Soloveitchik. And where are we? Yes, I'm looking for 9. Yes. So now, in another place, Rav Soloveitchik's document is saying the following, and that should be, we all know. So Rav Soloveitchik is documented. He said, we all know that the major reason for the current wave of hatred against Jews that has engulfed the Muslim, in particular Arab world, is the founding of the State of Israel. We've already shown that. Why do they hate us now? Because we have a state. Is that a good thing? Yet, in considering the question, was it worth it? Rav Soloveitchik said, it depends. If the State of Israel will be a link in the golden chain of Jewish tradition, if it paves the way for the end of days, then all the sacrifices are worthwhile. All the altars that we built to found the state are sacred and precious. But if Israel become a secular kingdom without Torah, without sanctity, without the Shabbos, without Jewish education, without family purity, a state in which Jewish uniqueness will be erased, then the price we are paying for her in blood is too heavy. So now, Rav Soloveichik did not explain why, in his opinion, if Israel were to ultimately become a religious state, all the sacrifices would be worthwhile. He doesn't explain why. But be that as it may, Rav Soloveichik, he's died almost, over 20 years, maybe more. So what about the price we've paid until now? And this is always the question. How many more Jews will have to chason die for us to say the price isn't worth it? If, God forbid, the entire Israel got nuked and all 7 million Jews died, would you say it was worth having a state? What if half of them get killed? I mean, where do you get to the point of saying, is it worth it? And even why is it worth it? Anyway, tomorrow we're going to go and see what the author of The Empty Wagon has in response to everything Rav Soloveichik said, and then we'll continue with other things.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.